What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 37 of the Silver and Gold. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
And you'll notice that today our heads are a little bit bigger than normal. There is some sort of flu going around that just inflates our heads, inflates our egos, and we're ready to get back into it. But in all seriousness, Mike and I are kind of playing around with this camera setting on StreamYard. So, we think it looks better, and maybe you guys can let us know in the comments if you prefer this or if you prefer the old way. But yeah, I think this is how we'll have it, set up from now on. But today we're going to be discussing what are the 49ers' biggest needs, and we're going to also be discussing what are the Raiders' biggest needs. But today we're going to be starting with the 49ers, like we've been doing in the past several weeks. And I've created a little bit of a visual aid, to sort of help everybody kind of visualize what the 49ers are going to need, when talking about the biggest needs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. And I've created, a spreadsheet. So what we can see here is that the 49ers are going to, in some ways, need to address many positions either in the draft or free agency. And right here, I just kind of want to run down what all the colors mean before I start going into position by position. So if you see right here, I've got quarterback as, coded as green because I think that the 49ers need to add depth in that position. Whereas a position, let's just say, for example, like left end, I color-coded blue because I think that the 49ers need to add starters at that position. So we're going to start with the offense. And we got, the 49ers have obviously Brock Purdy still with 2 years remaining on his contract. So that's what that number in the parentheses stands for, is how many years are remaining on his deal. So we've got Brock Purdy. And so far, I believe that Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen are free agents, and we'll go into the free agents. What do you think, Mike? Should I go over the free agents first, or go over, the positions? What do you think would be probably better?
Well, I would say go through the positions first as far as who's under contract, and then get into the free agents.
Yeah, I agree. So the 49ers, I believe, are going to have to, I don't know if it's really in their best interest to go after a backup quarterback through free agency, because Brock Purdy now is maybe more experienced than some of the quarterbacks that are going to be free agents, because Brock Purdy, played several years in college and has now played in 2 deep playoff runs, and if you're looking for a team that is looking for a backup quarterback, you probably want somebody, who can just step in there and maybe provide, a similar skill set that Brock Purdy can, operates the offense under. So I would probably look in the draft for that. So that way, you're already taking advantage of Brock Purdy's rookie deal. So you would probably want to keep the quarterback room as cheap as possible. If not, I could see the 49ers bringing either Sam Darnold or Brandon Allen back. But I think it would be in their best interest because right now they are currently under, I think they're -5 in salary cap, -5 million. I think it would probably be in their best interest to get more, cheap quarterbacks, as your backup. And who knows, you might even find the next Brock Purdy, right? Like, you're not looking for a guy who's going to probably compete and take the job away from Purdy. But I would assume that, you would want if Bill Walsh had, Steve Young ready to go, behind Joe Montana, there's no reason why you can't get another young prospect, through the draft or maybe undrafted. Uh, I think you should draft a quarterback, but there's no reason why you can't draft a guy to be behind Brock Purdy. So I think if you take one or two guys, maybe one free agent, one through the draft, that's probably where you want to find your depth. So now we go on to the running back position, and we've still got Christian McCaffrey under contract for 2 more years. He is technically eligible for an extension at the end of next season, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. Um, Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason are both on contract years, so uh, I think the likelihood of the 49ers keeping both of them is probably unlikely. I would see that, I could see that maybe they choose one or the other. But I think keeping both might be a long shot, but we'll see. If I had a choice, I think Jordan Mason has less mileage on him, and I mean, Elijah Mitchell is also a great player, so I don't think they can make a wrong decision with both of them. But Jordan Mason might have fresher legs. Um, Other than that, they're definitely going to want to draft running backs because, I don't think that it is smart to pay running backs because, they are higher risk positions and, you're already paying McCaffrey. So really he's going to be getting most of the touches, and you can get a guy like the 49ers have been getting in the draft, but maybe not using a third round pick, maybe use a later draft pick if you're going to waste it on a running back who isn't going to get in the game. So,
Yeah. You
uh,
you could even find pretty solid running backs undrafted, you
oh,
know?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
look,
Same
a
goes for
couple of years ago, the
fullbacks.
49ers had Matt Breida, who was also undrafted. And I don't
Yeah.
even
For
think
the
Raheem
Raiders.
Mostert was drafted.
Yeah, and the Raiders had Jalen Richard a few years back. He was really good, undrafted, and Alec Ingold at fullback, undrafted. So
Let me double check. All right, on Mostert because I don't want to say it if it's wrong. So Raheem Mostert draft. Yeah, he was undrafted in 2015, and he fell on the 49ers' lap, I think, twice. So the 49ers, I think Kyle Juszczyk probably remains on this football team, although there is speculation that the 49ers might move on from him, in order to save a couple $1 million. He might be a cap casualty. So we'll have to keep an eye on him. But if the 49ers choose not to bring Kyle Juszczyk back, I doubt that they replace him. I don't think that the NFL, sort of utilizes fullbacks enough to justify the 49ers going out and getting another fullback, especially like with the way that their offense is like they already have great skill position players. I think maybe they need to focus on getting depth on the offensive line and really look for starters. But we'll talk about that in coming up. Uh, the wide receivers, obviously the 49ers still have Deebo Samuel under contract for 2 more years. Brandon Ayuk only has 1 year remaining with the team. So we're probably going to see Brandon Ayuk hold out until the 49ers provide him with the new contract that he thinks is satisfactory. It's probably going to be the drama of the offseason, if I had to
yeah.
guess.
For clarity,
Ronnie,
sorry, is this his 5th-year option this year?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So
Yep.
Brandon Ayuk has played, 4 seasons. His
Going on
rookie
5.
year, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and now we're, headed on to 2024, which would be his 5th year. So
Yeah.
It'll be interesting what the 49ers decide to do with Brandon Ayuk given that, given their current cap situation. But I think the 49ers absolutely should add depth to wide receiver, regardless of what they're going to do with Brandon Ayuk, because Juwan Jennings is going to be a key, free agent. And Chris Conley is also a free agent, and Ray McLeod is also a free agent. So obviously, if the 49ers have to prioritize one of those 3 free agents, their priority should probably be Juwan Jennings, but another team might price them out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you've got Ronnie Bell as the third string wide receiver, and then you've got Tay Martin as the fourth stringer who has 1 year left on his deal. You know, Tay Martin kind of seems like one of those players that I could see the 49ers just kind of, bringing back, and he would be, in and out of the lineup in terms of like being active on game days or not. But I don't see him as like a mainstay starter. So the 49ers, I think, are probably going to address wide receiver most likely in the draft. And then they also have Danny Gray, who has been on injured reserve. And he still has 2 years left on his deal. And the 49ers are still waiting for him to make a contribution since being drafted. And, the thing about Danny Gray is I think his skill set was sort of drafted with Trey Lance in mind as quarterback, because Danny Gray is sort of that deep threat wide receiver. And as we saw in that first preseason game, I think Danny Gray caught, I think it was a preseason game against the Packers. Danny Gray caught like a, big bomb from Trey Lance. So I think that's sort of the mindset, or like, that they sort of had like the vision for Danny Gray. But, Brock Purdy brings, a different skill set. He's better on the intermediate stuff, throwing with anticipation. So Danny Gray just has to work on his route running and, being able to get open. Besides just outrunning the defenders, just straight up the field. As for tight ends, we've got George Kittle under contract for 2 more years. I would be very interested to see what the 49ers do with Kittle after that, or if they possibly move him beforehand. And the reason why I say that is not because I'm expecting them to move George Kittle, but Bill Walsh always said it's better to move, it's better to trade a player a year too late than a year too early. And I think that George Kittle maybe is showing a little bit of like, wear and tear over the years of being such a physical player. He is a block first player. Yeah. And then behind George Kittle, we've got Braden Willis under contract for 3 more years. He was drafted the same year as Cam Latu this past season. So they were both rookies. The notable free agents under the tight end position are Ross Dwelley and Charlie Warner. I could definitely see them bringing like Ross Dwelley back or Charlie Warner back, because they've done it in the past. I think that Ross Dwelley has been a free agent before and has decided to just stay with the 49ers, even though that they don't give him the football. But I don't know how much focus that they're going to actually put on the tight end position, but still, I would like to see there be sort of a deeper tight end room than, just kind of what they have right now. I think that they recently signed Jake Tongs. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I think it was announced on February 14th. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but he should be a practice squad player, but you never know how it shakes out in the offseason. So left tackle.
Sorry, really quick for Jake Tongs.
Yeah.
Essentially, what was he signed to a futures contract?
Let me look at it.
Probably along with like 10 other players or something. Because I know at the end of the season, which for the Niners came way later than most teams, teams like to sign their practice squad players to futures contracts.
Let's see here.
And it's essentially a 1-year deal.
This is what the 49ers have posted on their website. So Tongs originally entered the NFL after signing with the Chicago Bears as an undrafted free agent on May 6, 2022. He went on to appear in 4 games with Chicago, was released by the Bears on November 10th, 2022, and signed to the team's practice squad 2 days later, where he spent the remainder of the season. In 2023, Tongs signed as a reserve/future contract with the Bears on January 9th and was released by the team on August 17th. Yeah, this part down here doesn't even say.
Go to transactions up at the top. That's usually what I look at on Raiders.com.
Okay. So the transactions. So he was signed on the 13th. I said the 14th. Yeah, it
Doesn't
just says
say,
that,
though. Doesn't
but
say, like, to what.
he was
Well,
signed with a bunch of other players that I think
yeah.
are going to be probably practice squad esque, kind of players, like
Yeah.
fighting for a position, but training camp bodies.
Right. So well, it said for Isaac somebody, the offensive lineman, it said reserve/future contract. I figured that's what they were all signed to. Usually that's what teams do at the end of the season. But anyways, not to hijack.
No, you're good.
On to the offensive line.
It was a good question. The offensive line. So I didn't highlight left tackle. I didn't highlight left tackle because they've got Jalen Moore as the backup, and obviously they've got Trent Williams. Obviously, you would want to upgrade, but I think that the more pressing need is going to be getting backups for the left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle position, and really actually getting starters for the right guard and right tackle position. If the 49ers can somehow afford a starting caliber right tackle or right guard through free agency, I say that they do it that way. Other than that, I could see them spending their first or second round pick on, a right guard and right tackle. I wouldn't even be opposed to them spending both their picks on that. But as we see later on, we're going to see that they also have other needs on defense. So the 49ers are spending all this money on their edge rushers, right? Well, they're spending it a lot on Nick Bosa. And then, they've got a huge gap, really. They've got a bunch of free agents on the defensive line. And I didn't even mention like the offensive line, John Feliciano. I don't see the 49ers bringing him back. But for the defensive line, they've got Javon Kinlaw as a free agent, Sebastian Joseph Day as a free agent, Kevin Givens as a free agent. For defensive end, they've got Chase Young and Cleveland Farrell. It's going to be very, very, I guess I've been saying very interesting like the entire episode. I want to find another word, but I would love to see the direction that they take. If they're going to try and bring Cleveland Farrell back, I think that he was having a great season. Maybe he's earned a contract somewhere else, but I know that, he finished the season on injured reserve. Drake Jackson, I expect to slide back, right back into, being in the mix. I don't expect him to be a practice squad player. We've got Robert.
You've got him down there just because he was on the injured reserve.
He was on IR.
Yeah.
So Robert Beal Jr. is the only other healthy edge rusher that the 49ers have. I would say Eric Armstead, but Eric Armstead primarily is a defensive tackle. And, some seasons they'll mix him in and out of, right end and left end. But, he primarily, I think, is most effective as a defensive tackle. Let's see. Robert Beal Jr.'s got 3 years left on his deal. Nick Bosa's got 5. So we don't have to worry about Nick Bosa. It's just about worrying about pairing him with, talent, because Nick Bosa can't just do it all by himself. So the 49ers, I wouldn't even be shocked if the 31st pick is an edge rusher. Mike, would you be shocked?
I guess my initial hunch, if you will, would be that they would pick an offensive lineman, but I could see a defensive lineman, sure. Especially, I guess, defensive end, because, as of right now, nobody's sticking out to me opposite Nick Bosa, especially assuming that they don't bring back Chase Young, and, obviously getting to the passer is a big deal in this league. I think after free agency, we'll really have a good gauge of where they might go in the draft. But I think from what I'm seeing today, the best bang for your buck at pick 31 is probably going to be an interior offensive lineman.
Mhm. That's what I've been hearing too. So, what I would like to see the 49ers do actually with their first pick is I would like to see them draft a right tackle, and then I would like to see Colton McKivitz slide to right guard because
Oh, there
Colton
you go.
McKivitz in the first couple seasons was playing guard. I think that he could slide back there, and if you have to platoon McKivitz and Burford just to make it work,
Mm.
I think that should be fine. Burford is still young. I think he's 21, 22 years old. Um, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and you know, I think that maybe you could find some sort of journeyman the way that they found John Feliciano, right? And maybe have him, work in at right guard. I know it's not ideal, but really it's going to be it's not always ideal when you're building a roster. And I wish it was. I wish the Niners could have the best offensive line in the league, but it takes years of assembling it. And if maybe in this draft they could get a right tackle, and then in the following draft they could, possibly get another guard. The only thing is they might lose Aaron Banks in the following draft. So like I said, it takes years to really build this, and the 49ers are sort of a top-heavy, top-loaded team in terms of the way that they pay their players. So this is the price that you have to pay when you are retaining so much talent. Um, so over here, back to the defensive line, the 49ers have practice squad players that they've signed, just on the 13th and the 14th. Um, Players like Raymond Johnson III, Ernest Brown, Sam Akoyinu, Akoyinanu. I hope I didn't botch that too bad. And then the 49ers brought back Alex Barrett and Austin Bryant. And then, like I said, Drake Jackson's probably going to slide back into hopefully not the starting role. But if he is, hopefully he's improved. And I hope that the injury wasn't that serious. I know that Drake Jackson can have a good game here and there. We saw week one, he had 3 sacks. So if he can, bring some consistency and, you know, show that he can refine his pass rush moves, it's really going to be, I think, it's going to be telling on how the defensive line is going to sort of produce this year based on who they select as their defensive coordinator, because right now it's still February 26, 2024, and the 49ers still don't have a defensive coordinator. And there's only been reports of a couple people that they've interviewed for the position. So, yeah. Um, I hope that they get one soon because the combine is just about to start, and you probably ideally want to have a defensive coordinator keeping an eye on like all the defensive talent and who are a couple players that they're going to want in the draft. So I know the scouts really do most of that work and like, keeping an eye on players and really building the draft board, but still, you probably want everybody all in lockstep and you know, giving their feedback. So at defensive tackle, the 49ers need to add depth uh, because they're losing Kinlaw and they're losing Joseph Day, who they acquired from I guess as a free agent because the Chargers released him. And they're losing Kevin Givens, like I mentioned earlier. But it's looking like right now the decision to pay Javon Hargrave, I mean, he's a quality starter, but I don't think the 49ers are getting out of him what they expected when they gave him the big contract. Like they essentially gave him the contract that they could have given DeForest Buckner, but they gave it to Javon Hargrave. And I mean, he's not a bad player. It's just that the 49ers could have used that money and put it towards, like several, I guess, solid players as opposed to putting it into one really good player. You know, you probably like the 49ers, I think, are going to have a little bit of depth issues coming up in the coming years with all this money that's like uh, coming from all these backloaded deals. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be eye opening and hopefully not so disheartening. I don't know. How do you see it, Mike?
For D tackle.
Just in general, like the 49ers roster, um, like as you're seeing so far of what they have, obviously they have 11 draft picks to work with and negative 5
Right.
million in cap space to work with.
Yeah.
Um, all these contracts are starting to really make it hard. Like there's going to be hard decisions coming up, and Brandon Ayuk is going to be one of those decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's making it difficult as far as the outlook is the negative $5 million in cap space. I don't know who you can cut to change that. I know you mentioned Juszczyk a couple minutes ago. I know a lot of teams will obviously, first and foremost, teams will restructure contracts to clear up space. So any players that have 3 to 5 years remaining, you can make a lot of cap space with those contracts. Whether it's Boza, McCaffrey, maybe somebody like Kittle, you can restructure, to make space now, but you're going to pay for it later, right? And that's maybe part of the reason why you guys have negative $5 million now is because you did that a couple years ago, as well as obviously having a very top heavy roster with a lot of big contracts. And we were having a conversation earlier where, we were talking about, hey, remember when at the trade deadline last year, the Niners had $40 million, like mid season. And then, of course, you trade for Chase Young, which probably cut into that a little bit. But, basically the point of the conversation was, doesn't that money carry over? And I don't know the exact rule for carrying over cap space. I think there might be a limit, but I'm not sure. There might also be like a limit per year or every couple of years or something like that. But it's possible that just something I thought of earlier was, what if they had that 30 to 40 million dollars in cap space last year, possibly unspent, specifically to carry over this year, just to help with how bad the cap space was going to be. Maybe that $30 million left over is actually a part of this -5, where it could have been -35, but instead it's just -5. I don't know for a fact. That's just a theory. It's possible that nothing rolled over, but wasting $30 million in cap space doesn't make sense to me. You know, in
On
that
a team
case,
that could have won
front,
the Super Bowl.
yeah, in that case, if that's the case, week 18, restructure with Nick Bosa, front load his contract. Hey Nick, we're
Mhm.
gonna give you another $30 million today if you can take a little less the next couple of years and save. So my guess is it rolled over and it helped you this year, even though it doesn't look like it right now. But I again, your team is loaded with top heavy contracts. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Christian McCaffrey. The only person that doesn't have a big contract is your quarterback, right? Eric Armstead, Charvarius Ward, George Kittle, Trent Williams, right? So that's the tough thing. And obviously, looking at this depth chart, it's like, well, the depth looks like an issue for the most part, besides weak side linebacker, left end, a couple of those positions that clearly need a starter. But the real question for me, like I started, it's that -5 million in cap space. If John Lynch and company can find their ways to clear that up, I think you can find some serviceable players, whether it's in free agency or in the draft.
Mhm. Yeah, the 49ers have to have a great draft. I feel like have been having spotty drafts the past couple years, and haven't had many contributions out of their rookies. Besides, this past year we saw Jair Brown, we saw Jake Moody, and outside of that, I mean, what rookies really played? They
Yeah.
Did they just draft nobody? No, they drafted players. They just didn't really, that's a pattern with Shanahan. I noticed is that their young players don't really get trust, right? They have to earn it. Um, I'm trying to look along the line of players. I mean, Purdy definitely in his rookie season contributed to the team, but he was the third string quarterback going in. Um, yeah, Bosa was an instant impact. Um, Mitchell, instant impact. I guess it just depends. And I think it probably just has to do with the fact that the 49ers have not been drafting well. So their players aren't really playable on a win now team. So going back to the defense, after Hargrave, the 49ers also still have Kalia Davis, who's on contract for 2 more years. He's still, ended the season, I guess, on IR. They have T.Y. McGill and Spencer Wage. I think it's or Wagey. I don't necessarily know how to pronounce that, but T.Y. McGill and Spencer Wage are still under contract for one year. So hopefully we can get contract year T.Y. McGill and contract year Spencer Wage, but not all players are built to get big paydays. So I'm not necessarily going to pour all my expectations into those two players. For linebacker, the 49ers have Fred Warner, obviously as the starting middle linebacker, one of the best middle linebackers in football. He's got 3 years left on his deal. And then behind him, they have D. Winters. D. Winters is another rookie who they drafted last year. Didn't make a single impact. I maybe saw him get 1 sack this season, this past season in 2023. But Dre Greenlaw is, going to be under injured reserve for I don't know how many months. He's not currently placed on it, but I know that he had surgery on his Achilles to repair it after he tore it in the Super Bowl. Yeah, that was a big blow for the 49ers because now they don't just have to address the depth of their, weak side and strong side linebacker. They have to find a starter. I mean, either way, they were going to have to find a starter at one of those positions, but, now they have to find 2. And it's a team with not a lot of cap space, but a lot of draft picks. So they have to hit it. We're going to find out how, we're going to find out just what John Lynch is made of. And, if Adam Peters really was as big of an impact as people think that he might have been. I mean, we won't really find out, we won't necessarily know the answer. Like if the 49ers draft well, that doesn't mean that it was all Adam Peters, or if they draft poorly, that all the good stuff was Adam Peters. It's just John Lynch is going to have to find other avenues on, how to get through with the scouting department on how to draft well this year. Jalen Graham, also another player that was drafted last season that didn't make a tremendous impact on this past season, is going to probably have to step up and maybe split time with a rookie. Because the 49ers had other linebackers, but they are going to be free agents. So Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, Oren Burks, those are 2 players who are not going to be, probably back on the team unless the 49ers, re-sign them. And then corner is very, very interesting and scary. So Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, and Ambry Thomas are their top 3 corners, or at least on the depth chart. Ward and Lenore are, great starting corners in the NFL, or at least Charvarius Ward is in my opinion a lockdown corner, and has done a tremendous job this past season. Diamador Lenore has improved so much. Ambry Thomas, he has his good weeks, and then he has his other weeks where he just gets picked on. So they're all going to be free agents this upcoming year. I don't know if the 49ers can afford to bring Charvarius Ward back after that. I could see them re-signing Lenore and letting Ward walk because Ward might command a bigger, payday. I don't know. How do you see it, Mike?
I think it depends on the cap space,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it also probably depends on how good Ward plays next season. If he repeats his 2023 season, I don't see how you let him go. I don't know if he's eligible for a franchise tag. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you are eligible to do that if he comes from a different team or if it's only if you've drafted them. I'm not sure. But yeah, the way that he played this past season, I'd be keeping Ward. But again, if you're coming into next season and it's negative $10 million in cap space, well, you probably do have to let him go and try to get a comp pick.
I think you can franchise tag any player because I think that the 49ers they've used a franchise tag on Robbie Gould before. And he was not drafted by the 49ers.
Yeah, so I could see Charvarius Ward being a franchise tag, option next season because, just looking around, I see Eric Armstead with 1 year left on his deal, but there's no reason to make him a franchise player, at whatever cost that would be. And if you want to scroll up just for a second to the offense, just really quick. Aaron Banks, maybe, but probably not. Colton McKivitz, probably. To the left, I don't know.
No, I know.
Oh, Ayuk. Ooh, that's...
Yeah. That would be an interesting franchise tag option.
Yeah. You have either Ayuk or Ward. Those are two big names. And then you have two offensive line starters as well. So, yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk, Aaron Banks, Charvarius Ward, and Eric Armstead as all four of those guys could be franchise tagged next season.
Yeah, but Eric Armstead won't. I can tell you right now. That's
I don't think so either.
That's like north of $20 million for that franchise tag.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, well, they're already paying him 20-something million right now as is. So
yeah, but is he worth that?
No. So, and Eric Armstead's a good player, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's not producing $20 million defensive lineman numbers.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. And then behind these guys, the 49ers have young corners. They've got Samuel Womack and they've got Darrell Luter Jr. Womack looked like he was going to be a playmaker, just a couple of years ago, who, he had 3 interceptions in that preseason. He was, he showed out in the preseason, but, one thing that we've learned about, the preseason, especially on this show the past year, it doesn't signify or determine how the rest of the season is going to play out. Like we saw the 49ers struggle this past preseason and they went to the Super Bowl. We saw the Raiders look like Super Bowl favorites in the preseason, and they fired their coach just a couple weeks later. So don't always believe what your eyes are showing you in the preseason, as tempting as it is. And then at strong safety, the 49ers have Jair Brown. I think that he's going to be the unquestioned starter. At free safety, I believe that Talanoa Hufanga is going to probably step into, I think Jair Brown might actually move to free safety and Hufanga might move back to his spot as strong safety. But
I agree.
Excuse me. Because I think Jair Brown is a little bit more versatile, and he's a lot quicker. He's younger. So he can be molded in, different ways. And I think that this past season he did play in different spots.
Yeah. I could see. I don't know. I mean, we'll see how Hufanga plays coming off the torn ACL. I could see him playing a lot in the box. You
Mhm.
know, just kind of see ball, get ball, rather than playing deep zone or something like that.
Yeah, and the
But
49ers still have George Odom under contract, for one last year. So that's really the depth that they're going to have there. I don't see how they walk away from this NFL draft without drafting another safety or getting one through free agency.
yeah,
Um,
could you see them trying to bring back Deshaun Gibson?
I think he's too old. I
Yeah,
think
he's like
he's too old.
31, right?
Let me look that up. Tayshawn Gibson age. He's 33.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, you can let him go.
And
I mean, he made some big plays that Lions game. I still say that forced fumble he made was the play of the game.
yeah, no, that was huge. He did rip the ball, from Jahmyr Gibbs's hand or punch it out, but um,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that you re-sign a guy just for one play. You
No,
know,
no. But he might be good depth if he would take like a vet minimum contract to stay with a winning team. It'd be a
Yeah, I
good
mean, if he takes a vet minimum, he already knows what the 49ers kind of want to do on defense. But,
right.
there have been plays where it's like, the defense has shown a lack of effort. And I think Gibson was one of those guys on one of the replays in the Lions game where he thinks that maybe Dre Greenlaw is going to make the tackle and Jamison Williams just goes for a touchdown, you know? So just one thing to look at. And, like I said, one play isn't going to be the determining factor whether or not the 49ers choose to bring somebody back. But uh, let me go back and look at the free agents. I sort of covered most of them, but I just kind of want to go over whether or not I think the 49ers should or might bring them back. So John Feliciano, I think, did a good job this past season at right guard, but there has been drama since the Super Bowl regarding John Feliciano. Mike, did you hear about like him throwing Spencer Burford under the bus in order to protect Colton McKivitz?
Oh yeah, it was Burford, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, the Eagles' defensive tackle got into it, and then yeah, and basically John Feliciano like admitted like that's my bad, bro, to Burford. Like I'm just hungover. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, dude. And I remember telling you, I think it was 2 pods ago we talked about it, and I was like, well, unless it was just a personal conversation, but I
Mm,
said, Feliciano was drafted as a Raider, and I remember really wanting the Raiders to keep him because he was like, 3 out of 4 years he was a backup, but he was
mhm,
like the type of guy who, if somebody on the interior offensive line went down, he would be the guy to step in and play for them, and he wouldn't like falter. He would stand his ground. I was like, oh man, I like that. There's actually a guy on the Raiders roster that we'll get into later that reminds me of him. And fourth year, he became the starter. He starts, yada yada, becomes a free agent, and I wanted the Raiders to keep him. They didn't. And then like 2 years later, he's on Twitter talking like mad shit about the Raiders one like random offseason day, and I was like, like what is this? Like I don't remember if it was the day Rodney Hudson got let go uh or Tom Cable got fired or something, but he was like airing out Tom Cable and just the Raiders in general. And I was just like, okay, I understand like going after a position coach, but why the franchise? What are we doing here? You know? So he is prone to the Twitter fingers, I think. Um, Perhaps when he has
mhm,
a few too many, but who knows?
mhm. And then I swear I saw news the other day that the 49ers were cutting Isaiah Oliver,
Yeah.
or releasing him. So I don't think they're going to bring him back. And then Logan Ryan, I think that, he might be like towards the end of his career. Um, I don't know. There were a couple plays where it was just he. Uh, I don't know if necessarily he was like put in bad positions. but he typically is a corner, but they had him playing safety, and just him going downhill trying to tackle a runner. He whiffed on a couple of those tackles. So I don't know if they'll bring Logan Ryan back. Terrence Mitchell, I couldn't even tell you who he is. I think that he might have been a practice squad player. Chase Young, I don't think that the 49ers are going to bring him back, primarily due to effort issues that, especially were highlighted in the NFC Championship game. Chase Young, I think, did bounce back and have a good Super Bowl, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to correct all the, I guess, lack of motivation that, was probably carried throughout the season.
Yeah. I think it's weird to say this, but I think Cleveland Farrell is worth more to teams than Chase Young, And maybe as a pass rusher, Chase Young still has more potential easily than Cleveland Farrell, but I think if you had both of them on a field, any given play, Cleveland Farrell might make more plays than him.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Cleveland Farrell's a really good run defender.
I think Chase Young is probably more gifted athletically, but I think Cleveland Farrell is probably a little bit more disciplined.
Yeah. And I would say I think Cleveland Farrell will be the better bang for your buck player coming out of this year's free agency. I think some team's going to overpay Chase Young, and they're going to regret it. And Cleveland Farrell's going to get some slightly underpaid contract, and he's going to pay dividends for that defense, at least against the run.
Yeah, so I think it would be in the 49ers' best interest to target Cleveland Farrell and bring him back. And then Javon Kinlaw, I don't know what Javon Kinlaw would cost, but the 49ers are sort of experiencing a I guess a shortage of defensive tackles, so they might re-sign Javon Kinlaw to maybe a short-term deal. I don't see them bringing back Sebastian Joseph Day. They might bring back Kevin Givens. They've done it, a couple times. Tayshaun Gibson, we'll see, because he knows, I guess he knows the personnel on the 49ers, and, he's already been on the Niners for at least 2 years now. I don't think that they'll bring back Matt Pryor. He, never really saw the field for the 49ers. I don't necessarily know who Ben Barch is. The 49ers might bring back Oren Burks on a cheap team-friendly deal if he's willing to take one. Oren Burks, though, did get picked on during the Super Bowl because, obviously Dre Greenlaw, went out with injury. So I don't know. The 49ers are kind of looking at depth issues at linebacker. So I don't know if they'll have to look at bringing Oren Burks back or Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles back, or possibly maybe bringing a guy like Azeez Al-Shaair back. I think that would be a perfect fit for the team. I just don't know if they can afford it because Azeez Al-Shaair is like a top 20 linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, and also whoever your defensive coordinator is,
Yeah, if it's Vrabel, Azeez Al-Shaair can come back and he'll be like, let me introduce you to my friend Mike Vrabel. Yeah. Randy Gregory, I don't know if the 49ers are going to bring him back. I feel like he was kind of hit or miss in games. Sam Darnold, we already talked about. I think the 49ers, I could see them bringing back one or the other. Probably Brandon Allen, because I feel like Brandon Allen is a guy who isn't going to be as expensive as a guy like Sam Darnold. And it seemed like the 49ers liked Brandon Allen. And I really think that the 49ers, the direction they should go is have another project in case Brock Purdy doesn't. Like, the 49ers could absolutely be in a position in 1 year from now where they don't know whether or not to extend Brock Purdy. And so I think it's very important for them to have a backup plan. So you keep a guy like Brandon Allen, and if Brock Purdy is going to price the 49ers out and they seriously can't afford him, like, I guess it'll just be like, all right, is Brock Purdy going to be another guy like Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo, or what Tua is probably going to be, and be a guy who's going to be too expensive for the team that he's currently on for the play that that he provides, and maybe you can get comparable play out of a guy out of like a young guy in the draft.
Man,
you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
a question that I have. I'm not saying that Purdy is going to be that, but the 49ers should be prepared. They should be prepared
right.
for that. Because how
Yeah,
much of it is actually Shanahan? How much of it is actually the talent, the supporting talent? I'm gonna get cooked online. I already see it because I'm over here, talking about Purdy. Purdy is out. I mean, he's making great plays. Like Purdy's making great plays, so he's going to be an expensive football player on a team that is not going to have money to pay quarterbacks going forward. And we have the supposed correct system for any quarterback. So the 49ers need to have a backup plan in case Purdy prices them out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw that Purdy has 2 more years left on his deal. We'll see what the team's cap space looks like, after 2 seasons from now. I could see players like Trent Williams and obviously Eric Armstead, one of either Charvarius Ward, Brandon Ayuk, or your offensive lineman Aaron Banks and Colton McKivitz, not being on the team. If you can get some rookies to fill them in within those 2 years, besides one of either Ward or Ayuk, I think you can afford Purdy, and I really think. We've talked about this current Super Bowl window that the Niners have. I think it's through Purdy's contract. And then I think what happens is players like Kittle get let go. Players like McCaffrey get let go. Debo, he gets let go. And that's a lot of cap space getting freed up to pay the quarterback. And I think that's going to be the way it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I was a betting man, I would bet that the 49ers are probably going to do everything that they can to give Brock Purdy his contract and get him back with the team. But anything can happen between now and 2 years. And, anything can happen between now and the next season. Super Bowl hangovers happen. Yeah. Anything can happen. And the 49ers need to be prepared for any scenario. But I think Purdy's probably going to have a good season this upcoming year. And I think the 49ers are going to pay him, if not to be a Super Bowl contender, then to just fill up the seats because the fan base loves Brock Purdy and it's going to make money.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think you have that window and then you have to have something to bring in the fans. So, having Purdy, I think he's such a good quarterback paired with Shanahan that you can lose players like Kittle, McCaffrey, and replace them with younger guys, and Purdy can go out there and still win games with a good enough defense led by Fred Warner and maybe Charvarius Ward,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So,
and Nick Bosa.
Yeah. I already talked about Ross Dwelley and Charlie Warner. I could see the 49ers bringing them back. It's just a matter of if they'll come on a cheap deal and if they would come back. The 49ers tried to draft 2 tight ends this past year, made no contribution whatsoever. Charlie Warner blocking, but he wasn't one of the ones that they drafted. Cam Latu, they drafted him, and apparently he couldn't catch a ball to save his life. And one thing that Grant said something like this past offseason. They're like something along the lines of, they drafted this tight end. He's got he's got great legs, but he was born with no hands. just the funny criticisms that that Grant has from time to time. Uh, so Ray McLeod, I don't know if the 49ers are going to bring him back. I don't think that they are or really should. Um, Chris Conley, maybe, but he wasn't necessarily a player that was like consistently in the lineup. Juwan Jennings, I think the 49ers should try and bring back, but they might get priced out. They're paying a lot of other players. Alfredo Gutierrez, I'm like 99% sure they're going to bring him back because he doesn't like take up a roster spot on the practice squad. So, because he is an international player, and I think that there's like I think there's some sort of rule in place where it doesn't take up, a roster spot on the practice squad. And then they've got Jason Verrett, who's going to be coming off another season-ending injury. He's had like 7 of them. Poor Jason Verrett. I would love to see him back, but you just have to think after each one, it's like, oh man, is this going to be the one that ends his career?
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate because he's such a great player. So, yeah. And then the last thing that I didn't get to touch on is special teams. The 49ers might actually, I might color code this in green because they might need to look for a different starting kicker other than Jake Moody. I think it's worth looking for another veteran and bringing in a guy and not just relying on Jake Moody. Although I'll say, I feel like a lot of kickers that are actually really good struggle a lot early on, or like kind of inconsistent in the first couple of years, and then they really like hit their stride and are very comfortable the rest of their careers. It's kind of weird. Like wasn't Adam Vinatieri kind of that way at first, and then he made the game-winning kicks in like the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, for about 3 minutes, Jake Moody had the all-time longest kick in a field goal in a Super Bowl. The fuck,
Yeah.
You know what I meant?
Yeah, and then the Niners still have Wishnowsky under contract for 3 more years, and Tabor Pepper. They're not going to make a change there. So yeah, that was the 49ers section of the roster breakdown. Let's go ahead and just let's just go. We'll go full speed into the Raiders. Mike, I'm going to bring up the Raiders depth chart, and I'll let you have the floor. Sorry I took so long with the 49ers. I was not expecting that.
No, you're all good. I'll probably take just as long, but that's fine. This is all we got today, so not a big deal at all. If you could scoot a little to the left, just to show the what the colors kind of mean here, because there are a lot of colors here. First off, before I get to the Raiders, the NFL did announce that the salary cap is $255.4 million per team this year. So that helped bump up every team in their cap space. And the Raiders have somewhere between $42 to $48 million in cap space this season. There are players that are probable cap casualties. I guess I'll get into that first. That is on row 8, the lighter blue shading. You have Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Hunter Renfrow, Janarius Robinson, who recently had a run-in with the law, Jerry Tillery, who we can save some cap space on, but I don't really know about that one. I think he's probably worth keeping just because of the need at D-tackle. And then Brandon Facyson. Just some players who, the Raiders can save some cap space by letting go of, and they're not by any means necessary to this team. No offense to Hunter Renfrow. I love him to death, but based off of recent usage, I don't know what happened. Maybe the team just wants to get faster. I think, honestly, under why am I forgetting the head coach's name? Not Antonio Pierce. Guy from the Patriots. Josh McDaniels. I hate him so much I don't even remember his name. I think Josh McDaniels ran out of favor with Hunter Renfrow. If not when, then very soon after Renfrow fumbled the ball for a loss against the Cardinals in overtime in week 2 of Josh McDaniels' tenure. But getting back to the actual depth chart at hand. So basically, on the top is the active roster and who is on the roster currently. And then below the number, like saying quarterback, it says number 4. Below that would be the current listed free agents. So, and then per each position, there's a color code. For quarterback, it's red, running back, red, fullback, red. That means there are starter and depth needs. If you scroll a little bit to the right, you'll see right tackle is coded in yellow. That means that position needs a starter, but the depth is actually good at right tackle. And then green basically means the position just needs depth. So we'll just go position by position again here, starting with quarterback. We have obviously Aiden O'Connell, and then 2 guys who I think will probably be cut this offseason, probably within the next couple weeks, Jimmy Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer. And then a reserve future contract is Anthony Brown. So really, you take out Garoppolo and Hoyer, we have Aiden O'Connell under contract for 3 years and Anthony Brown for this upcoming season. Maybe he'll be a practice squad quarterback. I think the Raiders probably draft a quarterback, and it would be wise to sign a quarterback as well, and then probably go into the season with 4 quarterbacks on the roster. At running back, under contract, we have Zamir White for 2 more years, Sincere McCormick for 1 year, Britton Brown for 2 more years, and Tyreek McAllister, a newcomer who recently signed a futures deal for 1 season. And obviously, as far as free agents go, you have Josh Jacobs, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden, and a restricted free agent, Austin Walter.
Dude, the names of the running backs that the Raiders have are classic. They're like, a lot of them have the same letter, first name as the same letter last name. Britton Brown, Josh Jacobs, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
They're like superhero names, a
yeah,
classic trope.
yeah. And then like the guys that don't have the same, like Sincere McCormick and
Yeah.
Tyreek McAllister. I could see in
Zamir
a Key
White.
and Peele. Yeah, I could see in a Key and Peele sketch.
Sincere
Tyreek
McCormick.
McAllister.
Yeah, Sincere McCormick is a pretty good one, honestly.
Yeah, I could see it. Like, I don't know who Sincere McCormick is, and I don't know how they sound, but I could just see it in the Key and Peele sketch. Sincere McCormick, like like with the lisp, right? Sincere McCormick.
Actually, McCormick, I think he was number 47 or 49. He was pretty good in the preseason this year, so it's good to see him coming back, especially with all the free agents. I will get into the free agents as far as what I think about them at the end of this. So I'll just move right into fullback. We have Jacob Johnson, the lone fullback, is a free agent. We have nobody at the position currently. And obviously that's something for Luke Getsy and the running back coach to kind of determine where they want to go with that. Wide receiver,
another first and last name with the same letter, Jacob Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, Hunter Renfrow, Christian Wilkerson at wide receiver. This is probably, as of today, one of, if not the best looking positions on the roster. You got a blue chip guy in Devontae Adams. You got Jacoby Myers, who on some teams might be a number 1. I know that's probably hyping up a little too much, but he can kind of do it all, I think. And then you have Trey Tucker, who is, I'll call him an ascending slot receiver. He's shown flashes this past season, and I'm really excited to see where he goes. But I also think, if you do cut Renfrow, probably with a post June 1st designation, you're going to need at least one more receiver in there. And I don't know if Christian Wilkerson's going to, make the 53 next season. So probably two more receivers will, two new receivers will be showing up on next year's roster. I'd say draft one, sign one in free agency, and see what happens. And then DeAndre Carter is the free agent at wide receiver. Tight end, you have Michael Mayer under contract for 3 more years. Cole Fotheringham, John Samuel Shanker, both futures contracts, so 1-year deals for them. And then Zach Gentry also with 1 year remaining. Here we go with another superhero name, huh, Josh? John Samuel Shanker.
I don't know if it's like I just don't see these names very often, but this has been like a thing ever since we started the podcast. It's these guys' names. They're great.
Yeah.
John Samuel Shanker.
Cole Fotheringham. That's like a boxing match from the 1930s. What's the big ticket tonight? It's Cole Fotheringham versus John Samuel Shanker. They're going to get in a big scuffle today, I say.
And the winner goes on to face Austin Hooper. The loser has to face Jesper Horsted.
Indeed. Oh, man. Okay, but actually, I should mention another big positive about the wide receiver position is the fact that the 3 top receivers are under contract for either 2, Jakobi Meyers, or 3, Devontae Adams and Trey Tucker, seasons. So the top of the wide receiver room should be looking pretty similar for the next 2 years, at least. And then you already mentioned the upcoming free agents at tight end, so we'll move right into left tackle. You got Colton Miller with 2 years remaining on his contract. I don't know why I expected him to have like 3 left. I hope he keeps it up and earns another contract. Because in 2 years from now, I know I'm not going to want the Raiders to be drafting a left tackle.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm curious if you could. Actually, I'll pull it up. Go ahead.
Colton Miller was a steal at 15.
Would you care to explain why you said that?
I would love to explain why I said that. So for the longest time, after the 49ers and the Raiders did the coin toss and the coin flip, and I think that the 49ers got the 9th overall pick and the Raiders got the 10th, and then the Raiders traded back. The Niners and the Raiders both needed an offensive tackle, and I thought that Mike McGlinchey was the better player between Colton Miller and obviously Mike McGlinchey. And so I think like the perception of Colton Miller when he was drafted was that he was a reach, right? Yeah. And so, obviously that was the perception. And I think Mike was a little upset when they drafted him. So I just wanted to rub in the salt and just like sort of just like clown Mike and say, hey, Mike, Colton Miller was a steal at 15. And then what do you know? He was the best tackle to come out of that draft. Well, maybe I don't know about like how the rest of the draft shook out, but he was the better tackle that came out of the first round.
Yeah. Of those 2, for sure.
Of those 2.
Out of the top 15 picks. Yeah. Basically, the consensus was, who did the Niners pick? Jeez.
McGlinchey.
Mike McGlinchey is a plug-and-play starting right tackle, and he might become a great left tackle. And then Colton Miller was like this project left tackle who might need to be a right tackle. That was kind of the consensus. And I was like, well, for the love of God, if we're going to be picking by need, why in the hell should we pick a project player? Like this is a desperate team that needs to start winning, and like having good play. Like if he's going to suck and be on a sucky team, he's just going to be a bust. Well, no, he came in as a rookie. He got hurt pretty early on. He wasn't quite, fully NFL built, and he was getting pummeled, dude. I remember there was a Seahawks game. He gave up a couple sacks, and I was like, this is horrible. And then he had that first NFL offseason, and he got bigger, and it was like, okay, I see a difference. And then he got on the field week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 17, 18, and it was like, okay, that was much better. I didn't complain about Colton Miller this season. And then 2 years in a row, and then 3, and it was like, oh, they should sign him to a new contract. And here we are today, right?
Yeah, that
Um,
didn't stop me from just clowning Mike the entire way through. Just, hey, Mike, Colton Miller was a steal at 15. Hey, should I
yeah.
pull up the picture, the Photoshop that I made?
No,
No,
no. Um,
I don't think I
don't
could if
don't
I
explain
wanted
that one.
to. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
don't
going
explain
to
it.
explain that one. I'm
Yeah.
not going to. So that'll
But
that'll go with me to the grave.
yeah. Um, and part of the reason why I was upset with the Raiders drafting Colton Miller, other than just not wanting them to draft based on need, I wanted best player available. The best player available by far was a guy who I thought should have been picked before the 9th overall pick, Derwin James. And he was
Mhm.
still there at 15. I was like, oh my God, run the card in. And then I hear Colton Miller, and I'm like, we just took a
I,
guy that most of the NFL experts are saying, yeah, I would pick him in the second round. I was like, oh, you're just stabbing me. Stabbed me right in the heart. But the thing I wanted to search up about Colton Miller was his age, which as of today, he is 28 years old. His birthday is October 9th. So, he'll be a free agent at 30, if I'm not mistaken.
Hey, so like with the 15th overall pick, you're like, oh my God, Derwin James is there, and then the pick is in. You know the was it the Las Vegas or the Oakland Raiders at the time?
It was Oakland.
Oh, the Oakland Raiders select Colton Miller.
Yeah.
I mean, still, you would probably love to have Derwin James, but
Yeah, but Derwin James ended up having the less healthy career as of so far. When he's on the field, he's a game wrecker, but I think Colton Miller has been keeping our quarterbacks, a little bit healthy, whereas Derwin James has not been keeping fully healthy. So I'll take
you
Colton
know
Miller.
you loved it when Derwin James picked up Travis Kelce and slammed him into the ground.
In hindsight, I love it even more. But yeah, I just think Derwin James is a badass. So yeah.
Mhm.
But continuing on left tackle, you got DJ Fluker, former Chargers first round pick, as a futures contract. Funny enough, he was, I want to say, the first pick of Tom Telesco's career with the Chargers, and the Raiders picked him up before Telesco became the GM. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe he, kind of gets a little more leeway with Tom Telesco at GM. And then you have Brandon Parker, more of a swing tackle, not specifically left tackle, as a free agent. At left guard, you have Dylan Parham with two years left on his contract. And then as an exclusive rights free agent, you have Jordan Meredith. And we were doing our Niners segment. I mentioned that the Raiders have somebody who's an upcoming free agent who reminds me of John Feliciano, at least the John Feliciano that left the Raiders. For me, that's Jordan Meredith, a guy who you can plug and play when somebody gets injured, and he goes in there and stands his ground. He doesn't give you something to complain about, which is unlike backup offensive linemen. And the fact that he's an exclusive rights free agent tells me just resign the guy. I know the Raiders have a new offensive line coach coming in, but I mean, come on. Hopefully, some of the other offensive coaches can say, hey, by the way, honestly, we have Champ Kelly. So Champ Kelly should be able to know, like, you know what? He stepped in and he played good. We should keep him. We have the exclusive rights deal in hand. We could go with that and make it easy, right? So I would keep Jordan Meredith. And then here comes the hard part of the offensive line. You have center with Andre James and Hronis Grasu as free agents. At right guard, you have Greg Van Roten, a starter, as a free agent, and Ben Brown, a futures contract 1 year deal. And then at right tackle, you have Jermaine Illuminor as a free agent, another starting offensive lineman. And then you have Thayer Munthard with 2 years left on his deal. Dalton Wagner, a potential guy to look into as we get further into the offseason at right tackle with 2 years left on his deal, and then another future contract in Jalen McKenzie. But yeah, that right side of the line from center down to right tackle. That's got to, other than quarterback, that is the big focal point for me this offseason.
If one thing's for sure, I think the Raiders absolutely have the number one team in the NFL when it comes to names. I don't think
I
it's
can take
close.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Fronis
So
Grasu, Greg Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor.
yeah, like I'm not even just talking about offensive line, just across the board.
Oh
It's
yeah,
you know, I would love to see a close second of like, Key and Peele should do a yearly award. Like Keegan Michael Key just did the NFL honors. You
Mhm.
know, they should do like an honorary award for a team with the most like crazy names, and then you would probably get like dynasties there because a lot of guys are like under contract. But
Right.
it'd be a cool award. Be a cool award to do.
Yeah. So we'll move on to defense. Can you just slide a little more to the left? There we go. Just so people could see the key again. Um, obviously we have Max Crosby, 3 years left on his deal, starting off at left end. Um, another blue chip player, franchise guy. They should never let him go. And then behind him again, I mentioned Janarius Robinson, who has had a run in with the law recently. I could see them cutting him because of this. I think he has zero cap hit, like dead cap. If they cut him, it's like $1 million, maybe in savings, maybe a little less. You could sign anybody in free agency. It's like we don't need people who are going to be having run-ins with the law. So then Charles Snowden, a futures contract guy. Obviously, this position needs depth, right? And then D tackle and nose tackle both combined. Probably the next biggest need on the Raiders roster, behind quarterback and offensive line, is the interior defensive line. You got Jerry Tillery with 1 year left in his deal. Again, you can get a sizable little amount of savings if you cut him. But I think like in spurts when he was playing, he made plays. He got pressure on the quarterback, so I don't think you need to cut him. If you cut him to save space and then you go and sign another defensive tackle like at his level, you might pay more unless you wait till the third wave of free agency. So just keep him. Matthew Butler, former, I think, 4th-round pick for the Raiders, maybe 5th, with 1 year left on his deal. Byron Young, still 3 years left on his deal, 3rd-round pick last year. Didn't show much. Hopefully, give him an offseason. Maybe he can start showing a little bit more next season. And then Nesta Jade Silvera, who's a futures contract, so he has 1 year left. Even though he's a 7th-round pick, I think there was not a lot of hype behind him, but I think he had a lot of talk in like a good way, like there was good vibes around him, and then all of a sudden he didn't make the 53, and I was like, well, no, so much for that. So, but as free agency, you have Adam Butler and Bilal Nichols, arguably the 2 starting defensive tackles this past season, and then along with nose tackle John Jenkins. I think John Jenkins is like 32, so I don't know if you bring him back unless you think he's a really good locker room guy. And he had the big touchdown against the Chargers, the big man tutty. But that was a forced fumble by Malcolm Kuntz. I mean, John Jenkins, good run stuffer, but, he's probably not doing much against the quarterback. So, and then you have a reserve future contract with Marquan McCall, 1 year on there. There's an ongoing trend you're going to notice with the defense. Most of the starters, other than the defensive tackles and Amik Robertson, are coming back. The problem that I'm noticing is that you look across the board and you have a lot of players with 1 year left on their deal.
Malcolm Kuntz wasn't a rookie this past year?
No, that was his 3rd year.
Holy crap.
He was drafted under John Gruden. He was a 3rd-round pick under Mike Mayock.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is his final year under contract on his rookie deal. He has gotten a little ahead of gotten a little ahead of making some money. Usually players on the contract year do all the money making, but he started last year, so good for him. Hopefully he keeps it up, and hopefully the Raiders keep him. Man, if he can be that guy, and then you could slide Tyree Wilson inside to D tackle, that sounds promising to me. Which, speaking of Tyree Wilson, he's got 3 years left on his deal, but I have the asterisk because you can give him a 5th-year option if he so deserves it. And then you have David Agoha, and he has an asterisk because he is the International Pathway Player Program player who does not affect the I think the 90-man roster or practice squad, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And he's on a futures deal, so he has 1 year. And then Ellerson Smith, same thing. I just put Tyree Wilson as the backup to Malcolm Kuntz because that's kind of what he was, but he also slid into defensive tackle quite a bit. So maybe next season they re-sign Adam Butler and Tyree Wilson is actually a D tackle, and maybe the Raiders go out and sign and draft a defensive end, and boom, there's your defensive line. Maybe. And maybe you keep John Jenkins and he's your nose. We'll see. I'd like to think they could do a little more there, but we'll see. Inside linebacker, you got Robert Spillane, 1 year left. Luke Masterson, 1 year left. Curtis Bolton, free agent. And then Kanai Mauga is an exclusive rights free agent. At weak side linebacker, you got Divine Diablo, 1 year left. Amari Burney, who was a rookie last year. Pretty speedy linebacker, solid in coverage, I'd say. 3 years left on his deal. And then Darian Butler, 1 year left on his deal. Nobody is free agents. At nickel, you got Nate Hobbs, the starter, with 1 year left on his deal. And then Tyler Hall is a restricted free agent. Great special teamer, and honestly, every time he's on the field, he's honestly looking good, on defense. So I'd like to see them keep him. If they don't, some team's going to swoop him up and be very happy. And then as far as corner, you got Jack Jones, 2 years left on his deal because the Raiders picked him up on waivers. So he kept his rookie deal. And then I just have the opening because that was a Meek Robertson spot. But clearly the Raiders need another starting corner. So, and then Brandon Faison, 1 year left on his deal, but I could see them cutting him because really, I think he's scheduled to make like $4 million. And it's like, why? Maybe it's less, maybe it's 3, but there's no need. Whatever it is, there is no need. They can sign 2 corners and draft at least 1 other corner and be good at corner. You got Jacorian Bennett behind him, 3 years left in his deal. Hopefully he continues to progress, maybe becomes a starter in like a year or 2. Sam Webb, Cornell Armstrong, both reserve players, and then Meek Robertson again, free agent at corner. I would love to re-sign him. We'll see. Free safety, you got Trevon Merrick, 1 year left in his deal. Chris Smith, a 5th-round pick out of Georgia last year with 3 years left in his deal. And then Jaden Grant, the reserve future contract. At strong safety, you got Marcus Epps and Tyreek Jones, a reserve contract, both with 1 year left under contract. And then Isaiah Polamau is the exclusive rights free agent at strong safety. Please bring him back. I'm sure they will. They still have Patrick Graham. They still have, Antonio Pierce. They know who that guy is. Week 18 against the Broncos, he was playing quite a bit, especially in the box. So I think Patrick Graham knows that he has a spot on this defense, and he should be back.
One thing I just realized that I need to add to these spreadsheets is like adding up all these numbers here, of the players, because it'll be very important when we get towards training camp and they have to start to do cut downs.
If you scoot to the left a little, I do have it adding up offense and defense respectively. So far there's 24 players on offense, 28 on defense.
We'll look at you. We'll look at you.
But I don't have a total yet because it's really not necessary. I think obviously it's out of 90 players. Once we get through free agency and then get close to the draft, it'll be closer to 90, but really not until the teams pick up unrestricted or undrafted free agents it's not going to be close to 90. So
Mhm. I can't wait till you go into the special teams because, like, a couple minutes ago, I was like, I don't know if you noticed me like laughing a little bit while you were in the middle of your defensive thing, but I read the long snapper's name, and I swear I've heard his name before, but I just thought it was funny.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
no
That kicker, the
disrespect
Raiders.
to Jacob Bobenmoyer.
Yes, Mr. Bob and Moyer. Kicker, they got Daniel Carlson, former Pro Bowler, absolute money. I love him to death. I didn't put how many years left are on these guys' deals, but obviously it's at least 1 year. AJ Cole, All Pro punter, blue chip player. Really, I know it's a punter, but he's great. And then at long snapper, we have another superhero, Jacob Bobenmoyer.
It
So
just reminds me of Oppenheimer. You know,
yeah,
I think I
yeah.
said that last time. I think when it came up, I think I said Jacob Oppenheimer, or I said something about no, that's a movie.
Hmm. Maybe you did.
I think I did
Uh,
on this podcast.
you know what? Really quick, let me find how many years are left on Daniel Carlson and AJ Cole's contracts. I'm not going to bring up Bobenmeyer, but really quick, Daniel Carlson. I'm on spawtrack.com for anybody wondering. Great website.
Mhm. Let me know and
Daniel
I'll put it in.
Carlson has 2 years left.
Okay. What about AJ Cole?
AJ Cole, not of the Blue Jays, but of the Raiders, also has 2 years left.
Mhm.
And then I'm actually going to just search up Jacob Bobenmeyer. He also has 2 more years. So the trio of special teamers have 2 years all together. So
Very good.
it's good.
Question:
Very
Did you want to
good.
go through these free agents?
Yes, yeah. I wanted to go through the free agents really quick, just to kind of go through who I think the Raiders should really consider bringing back. Obviously, at the top you have Josh Jacobs. Adam Schefter did put out a tweet, I think yesterday or Friday, basically saying, actually, I think it was today, Sunday, saying that the Raiders are
Today's not
very
Sunday.
much. Oh, today's Monday. Well, I work 4/10s, so it feels like Sunday to me. I'm off on Mondays, but Adam Schefter tweeted that the Raiders are very much not expected to franchise tag Josh Jacobs. The tag number for him would be 14.2 million dollars, whereas for most of the other running backs, it would be like 11 or 12. So it's just not worth it for the Raiders. And that was part of the reason why Jacobs was fine with the franchise tag last year, is because he knew every year the franchise tag escalates. So there was a higher likelihood that the Raiders wouldn't tag him again this year, you know. Um, that being said, I mean, the running back market is going to be flooded with talent. And I don't know if that's going to work like towards or against Josh Jacobs' favor, in free agency. Um, Adam Schefter did also mention that the Raiders are going to attempt to re-sign Jacobs before he hits the open market, but my gut tells me that all of these teams, whether it's the Titans with Derrick Henry, the Cowboys with Tony Pollard, the Chargers with Austin Eckler, if they even want him back, the Giants with Saquon Barkley, the Raiders with Josh Jacobs, a few others maybe, are going to allow their running backs to hit the market because they don't fully expect the market to be, super
Competitive.
high end. Yeah, it not super competitive to the point where it keeps, teams keep jumping each other. It's going to be like a lot of these teams are going to stay at the same ish price, especially because a lot of these running backs, Eckler and Derrick Henry specifically, they're aging, and the other guys, really everybody except for maybe Saquon, are coming off of kind of down years, a
Mhm.
lot more was expected of Tony Pollard coming off of Josh Jacobs being the rushing champion. A lot more was expected of him than what he did this past season, missing 4 games at the end of the year. I think maybe Saquon's the guy that gets the big money. And I think a lot of the running backs are probably going to say, well, see, that's what I should get paid. But the teams are going to be like, yeah, nah, because they don't have to. And really, they can just – the one thing that will go in these running backs' favor is that the draft this year is not special with running back talent. Whereas, like, say, last year's kind of was with, like, Bijan and obviously
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Jahmyr Gibbs, yeah. Whereas this year, it's like we'd be kind of – I don't even expect a second-round running back this year from what I hear, So that might work in their favor where some teams are like, oh, we should just get a running back just to be safe, But it's like, those running backs that I named, those are the A-list, if you will, running backs. But there are still other really good running backs behind them, guys like DeAndre Swift, a few others, but none that I'm thinking off the top of my head right now. But yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting. I think point being here, I could see the Raiders allowing him to test the market. Maybe they can work out a verbal agreement with him of, hey, kind of like, well, I'll just say it, a verbal agreement of, hey, go test the market. Let us know what you get, and perhaps we'll match. And if it's too much for us, we won't match. You're free to go wherever, but give us the chance to match. I think that's like an exclusive rights free agent or whatever. And I know Lamar Jackson last offseason, the Ravens franchise tagged him under a certain name. I forget what it was. It was like non-exclusive tag, I think. And basically that allowed Lamar Jackson to seek other contracts on the market, but it also allowed the Ravens to match the contracts or the contract that Lamar would sign. Obviously, with Josh Jacobs, that's not the case. But we'll see. We will see. Otherwise, at running back, we got Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden, and then at fullback, Jacob Johnson. I don't expect any of them back. They're all aging running backs. Amir Abdullah looked fine last year in spurts, but he's still like maybe 29 or 30. He might even be 31. At wide receiver, DeAndre Carter. There's no need to bring him back, but he's a former Charger. The offense is going to be different, but if he were to fit with Luke Getsy, I could see Tom Telesco, bringing him back. Again, former Charger, right? Austin Hooper, I don't see any reason to bring him back. Jesper Horsted, on the other hand, I could see reason to bring him back. The tough part for the offensive free agents is that, this is a pretty much brand new coaching staff besides the wide receiver coach. So yeah, I could see a lot of these guys leaving, right? Besides maybe some of the starters from last year, just because of the big needs at certain positions. Brandon Parker, if they want to bring back the swing tackle, cool. But Thayer Mumford could also be the swing tackle for the next 2 years. So there's no need to bring back Parker. I could see James Craig, I believe is the name of our offensive line coach. Maybe he has some guys out there, specifically former LSU offensive lineman, former Niners offensive lineman. Laken Tomlinson was just cut. Is that his name, right?
Yeah. He just got cut from the Jets.
Yeah. Not saying that he should be a starter for the Raiders, but just there are options out there that James Craig may have connections with that perhaps he would want over a guy like Brandon Parker or Hronis Grasu or Greg Van Roten, last year's starting right guard, who was like 34 years old. But you also have Andre James and Jermaine Illuminor out there who are big-time starters from the past few seasons for the Raiders. And like statistically, or maybe specifically like in PFF numbers, Andre James actually is like pretty good. And then like from my eyes, I think Jermaine Illuminor is pretty good. I think the fact that the Raiders have north of $42 million in cap space, I would sign one of them back. There's also the potential that Dylan Parham may slide to center this upcoming season from left guard. And if so, perhaps Andre James, you allow him to leave and you focus on bringing in offensive guards, right? Maybe you re-sign Jermaine Illuminor, who is versatile. You could slide him to guard if you need to. You could even start Thayer Munford at right tackle if you're really desperate. You know, you could have a Jermaine Illuminor at right guard, Thayer Munford right tackle, Dylan Parham at center, and bring in a new left guard. That could work theoretically, but I would definitely, if that's what I'm doing, I might be drafting a right tackle or another guard pretty early on in the draft. You know, again, you have Jordan Meredith, the exclusive rights free agent. Bring him back. Just solid depth at guard, especially with the need at guard. Just bring him back. And then Austin Walter at running back, restricted free agent. I want to say he's like 28 or something like that, maybe a little younger, but there's no massive need to bring him back. But if Jacobs ends up leaving, maybe. But again, it's a new offensive scheme, new offensive coaching staff. There's probably no need there. So,
yeah, I don't think that there's necessarily a need because, like you said, he's 28, and aside from Josh Jacobs, there's still 4 running backs under contract.
Yeah, and I think in the preseason, some of those guys will be really interesting. Tyreek McAllister and Sincere McCormick are 2 guys that may show some life, and then Britton Brown. I think every year he's been injured, but he was drafted in the 7th round a couple years ago. I think Ziegler's first draft. I'd like to see him, but realistically, they probably sign a free agent from outside, if not Josh Jacobs, and either sign or draft a pass catching running back. That's what I see. I think Zamir White paired with a pass catching running back would make a lot of sense to me. In theory, based off of Tom Telesco being the GM, if Austin Eckler were to be healthy and maybe last season the way that he looked is due to an injury that no longer bugs him, I could see Austin Eckler making a lot of sense. Zamir White as the sort of bigger back that maybe gets the rock on first and second downs, but then Austin Eckler comes down on obvious passing downs. I could see it. But I still, like, my heart of hearts tells me I want Josh Jacobs. And maybe what would be wise is to give more carries to Zamir White to help Josh Jacobs in staying healthy, right? But we shall see. And then actually we can just get into the needs on offense if you scroll back up. In order, I have the positions of need. Obviously, quarterback, that's the big one, right? Center, just because currently there's literally nothing there. But that could easily be eradicated by Dylan Parham being slid over to center, and then you switch that with left guard. You have right guard as well. Really, I mean, you can merge the two and just say the interior offensive line. Just give me 2 starters. You already have Dylan Parham. You need 2 more starters on the interior, whether you bring back Andre James or what have you. And then you have right tackle. Again, I think it's as easy as just re-signing Jermaine Illuminor. But I will say right now, even though I probably shouldn't really jump the gun yet, but as far as prospects that I've seen, I know I've talked many, many weeks about Jaden Daniels, dating back to last season, right? But if you take Jaden Daniels out of the equation, I think my favorite prospect for the Raiders right now is, and I'm going to butcher his name, Tallies or Tallies Fauga from
Oh,
Oregon
I want him
State.
for the Niners.
Well, you're not going to get him because he's probably not going to get past the 11th pick.
Oh yeah,
But
what
if
if
he
we trade
does,
3 firsts and a third for the 3rd overall pick? Then you won't get him.
there you go. That would work. But yeah, that dude, he just fits the brand for me for the Raiders. Just a big, mauling right tackle. He is what people kind of thought Mike McGlinchey would be. Just plug and play right tackle. He will come in week 1 and destroy NFL defensive ends. I guarantee it.
Would you
Specifically in the
compare him
run
to
game,
Tristan
but
Wirfs?
I can't because I don't watch Tristan Wirfs like that.
Mhm.
But as far as maybe NFL preparedness, I think he's probably there. I think he's going to come in and just day one, just not give shit up. That's how good I think he is. His hands are just fucking fluid, and his body is
Big,
just
meaty claws.
yeah. And his handwork is amazing, and his body is just built for it. He's got tree trunks for feet in a good way. He does not give up ground unless he wants to. So that's like he's my guy right now. If you're not talking Jaden Daniels, if Jaden Daniels gets drafted, I said it last week. I said if the Raiders are sitting there at 13 and it's like only the 5th and 6th best quarterbacks are there, do not draft the quarterback. Just don't do it. Draft the offensive lineman. Draft the best offensive tackle. Build up the line. Unfortunately, next year's quarterback class sounds like it sucks. So if I'm the Raiders, just in theory, right now, today, February 26th, I would draft somebody like Tallies Fuaga. Hopefully I'm saying that right, or Fauga, however it is. And I will get that right by the draft. And then in the second round, I would draft Michael Penix Jr. That would be my plan.
I think that's smart.
Yeah. And then obviously back to positions of need. Running back being the 5th position, and then honorable mentions fullback because we literally have nothing, and then tight end I think needs a lot of depth.
All right, let's get into the defense.
On defense, there's a noticeably smaller amount of free agents, which I like, in part because we have a, for once, good defense. Right off the bat, and if you're wondering what the colors mean other than just the orange and yellow is obviously their exclusive rights or restricted free agents, orange being exclusive, yellow being restricted. The red are the players that I'm most specifically inclined to re-sign. Adam Butler is a guy that I think the Raiders must re-sign. I think with my eyes, I saw a starting defensive tackle. I don't know what the numbers say. I don't know any of that, but he popped when I was specifically watching the defensive line. Quick get off, powerful, getting pressure on the quarterback. Those are things that I want from my defensive tackle. So re-sign him, keep Tillery, try to get another guy in there, maybe specifically a nose tackle, and then you have a trio of Butler, Tillery, and hopefully a progressively much better Tyree Wilson. I would take that. Maybe depending on how the draft goes, maybe you can draft a nose tackle. We'll see. But you have John Jenkins, free agent nose tackle, Bilal Nichols, free agent D tackle. He was the penciled in starter. He had a 2-year contract coming out of last year's free agency, or I guess technically 2 years ago, but he just didn't live up to the contract. Just let him walk. Curtis Bolton, a linebacker, good special teamer, solid backup at linebacker. If you can get him on a pretty, minimum deal, I would do it. But then there's Meek Robertson and Isaiah Polamalu, 2 guys who specifically Polamalu because he's restricted. He's a exclusive rights free agent, but if the Raiders can keep Meek Robertson, that would be great. Whether he's the starter or specifically at depth, he's a great third corner to have, in my opinion. And I think from what I've heard, he's a great locker room guy, Like, I think any time that there's like a vote from the players, like who's your favorite locker room teammate or the best guy in the locker room or who's the funniest guy on the team, and any of those sorts of things, it's always Amik Robertson. So he's a great guy to have just on the team, period. And he was making plays last year. The Packers game, the Giants game, he makes plays, and I loved him out of college. Even though he's a little smaller in size, he goes out there and he presses dudes. So linebacker, you got Kanai Mauga, another exclusive rights free agent. If it's a cheap contract, sure, but he was on and off, the squad, like even off the practice squad, So I don't see it as a necessity, but if you can get him on a cheap deal, sure. And then Tyler Hall, I would keep him. But when it comes down to, bringing it down to the 53, I don't know if they'll have space for him. So maybe letting him go isn't the worst thing in the world, and some other team will be happy. But I would say it's wise to keep good players, and if they have the cap space, keep them. Maybe he could be a good fourth corner on this team, Or if desperate, he could be our nickel, and Nate Hobbs could be our corner opposite Jack Jones. But we'll see.
And then the positions of need.
Yes, the needs on defense, right at the top, defensive tackle. You got to get a good pass rushing D tackle. If Adam Butler's the guy, cool. Hopefully Tyree Wilson again progresses and becomes a solid pass rusher in this league. And then below D tackle, you have corner. We need a guy opposite Jack Jones. Below that, you got nose tackle. Again, I mean, there's really nobody at nose tackle right now, so you got to get somebody in there to fill the gap, especially on against the run. And then inside linebacker, both of our inside linebackers have 1-year deals. I think a big thing on defense, looking at how few free agents we have, $40 million in cap space, I would re-sign a couple guys. That all is to be determined by, Champ Kelly, Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce, and Patrick Graham, as well as probably some positional coaches. But if you could scroll to the left just a little bit, or actually maybe a little slowly, I guess, maybe, just to kind of look like you got Marcus Epps, Trevon Merrick. Keep going. Like go all the way, basically. Nate Hobbs, 1 year. All in these guys' deals. Divine Diablo, Robert Spillane, Malcolm Kuntz.
Luke Masterson.
A lot of guys. Luke Masterson, yeah.
Darian Butler.
Darian Butler, I mean, he's a backup, but,
Jerry Tillery.
Yeah. I wouldn't re-sign him, but point being, Malcolm Kuntz, Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, Nate Hobbs, Trevon Merrick, and Marcus Epps. Re-sign at least 2 of them this offseason. Get these guys locked in, to help out Max Crosby for years to come. Because the last thing we need is to go into next offseason and it's like, I think all of our money is going to be going to re-signing these guys, But you also don't want to jump the gun. I mean, for all we know, Robert Spillane could go out there next year and just suck. I have no idea, right? We can't tell the future. But I would like to think that Malcolm Kuntz is bona fide. He's going to be good. I'd like to think that Nate Hobbs is a must keep. And you just re-sign both of them now and keep it moving.
I was rewatching the other day while I was taking care of my grandpa. I was rewatching our video that we did with Grant Cohn, where he was talking about players that stood out on the Raiders during that training camp. And one of the players that he brought up was Malcolm Kuntz. And I'm just thinking about how Malcolm Kuntz had a great season. And so I think that he's going to be probably even better next year.
I hope so.
It seems like he has an upward trajectory, and he's going to be working for that contract.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been pretty clear that every offseason he's got better and better. The only questionable thing was Josh McDaniels' first year. as head coach, it felt like Malcolm Kuntz kind of took a backseat. Like the final year under Gruden, and then with obviously special teams coach. Why am I forgetting everybody's name tonight? Rich Bazakia. It felt like, oh man, every time Kuntz is on the field, he gets pressure. And then again, Josh McDaniels comes in and it's like he just doesn't play. And I was like, man, what the fuck? Like this guy has like potential. What the hell? And then we came in last year, first year of the pod. And I remember we went over the entire roster, and I got to Malcolm Kuntz and I said, yeah, he'll probably be on the border of the 53. That's where I see him. He will be the 52nd, 53rd guy, or he might get cut because we drafted Tyree Wilson and we had Chandler Jones on the roster. But then Chandler Jones didn't work out, right, for reasons. Malcolm Kuntz obviously has to be kept at that point, and hey, it worked out. Yeah.
Man, I have that Chandler Jones, Bill Belichick song stuck in my head. Like every so often, it'll just like pop right back up into my head. And especially recently with like, the 49ers looking for their defensive coordinator. And I want the Niners to get Bill Belichick. So I'm just like singing the Chandler Jones song that he made recently. And the funny development about Chandler Jones is I guess he recently apologized and he said that
Yeah.
he's feeling much better.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that is very good. So good for Chandler Jones, but I've just got like the oh Bill Belichick, oh how I miss you. Like I would love to have Belichick as defensive coordinator of the Niners. But we're talking about Raiders. Mike, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I mean the final defensive need. If you could scroll back over there. Sorry.
Yeah, making me do everything today, huh?
I know, man. Was safety, because both of our starting safeties have 1-year deals remaining. So it'd be good to get another a fourth safety in there who could potentially become something worth putting on the field. I don't know what Christopher Smith is going to turn into. 5th-round pick this past draft, but he didn't get really much playing time at all. I don't even know if he played much special teams. Like I think he was a guy who was mostly inactive, week in and week out. So I'd like to think that he can progress into something, but I wouldn't be shocked if come, cut downs next season, he's a guy that gets let go. No offense to him, just I haven't seen anything. So
I had a professor in college named Christopher Smith, and I had like an 89.9%, and he didn't round it up. And I emailed him about it, and he still didn't round it up. So you know what? Whoever Christopher Smith is on the Raiders, you're out of here. No, I'm just kidding. No. Funny enough, Christopher Smith was actually one of the best professors that I had. And it was the first time I received a B in college, and I was very upset. So let this be a lesson. Sometimes you just got to take your medicine.
Yeah. Honorable mention as far as positions of need for the defense, I have defensive end. I think behind Max Crosby, there's practically nobody. So, draft somebody. Get somebody in there with some potential. Mm-hmm. And then if you could scroll up and to the left just a little, or right, I mean, we have the cap space, approximately 42.9 to 48.6 million. And then the dead cap space of 15 million. I think Chandler Jones is a big part of that dead cap space. And whenever the Raiders do decide to cut Brian Hoyer, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Hunter Renfrow, the dead cap space will grow, but so will the cap space. Mm-hmm. Perhaps not until June 1st, but still.
Is that why you have it as a range rather than a set number?
The reason why I have it as a range is because I looked at two separate sources for the Raiders cap space. And according to, I want to get his name right, 48.6 is from SpotTrack. The 42.9 is from Ari Mirov of the 33rd team on Twitter. And both both of these came after the $255 million announcement of each NFL team's salary
Cap
cap.
space.
So
Yeah.
yeah, cap space. So I don't know what the hell causes all this differential. I know all the contracts are super confusing, and like with Garoppolo, there's been so many mixed talk about like, oh, actually, the Raiders will make this much, 11.25, and it's like, well, actually, um, they won't make shit unless they really cut him after June 1st. They won't even make 11.2 if they cut him pre June 1st,
Hmm.
and they're going to have $17 million in dead cap. So, it's all confusing contract shit right now. So, what matters is how much cap space do we really have, and how much are we going to spend on each player.
Mm.
So,
And then next week we'll get into like which specific free agents maybe we want our teams to target, because free agency starts at some point in March.
yeah, I think it's March 11th. So, we'll look at the calendar, if you will, and
Mhm.
if we don't do that next week, definitely the following Monday we will do that.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think that's the show.
Yes.
Mike, I was sitting here thinking like, wow, you're really good at what you do. You know that? Like breaking
Thank you.
down, the roster and everything. Like I'm just over here sitting,
Well,
I'm sitting here like, man, I'm so glad that I went first, that I didn't have to follow up like you doing it, because I felt like you're so much better at like roster breakdowns and everything than I am.
thank you.
I don't know.
So this right here, let me clean off my screen really quick. This right here is the Google. Wait, is it a Google Doc? Yeah, it's a Google Doc. You're not going to be really able to see this, but that's my key, right? 2023 Las Vegas Raiders. I haven't even updated it to 2024,
Mhm.
but I have every position in here. I've been doing this for years just to kind of help myself get a grasp on the team. Anytime a move is made, I update it, even though I could just go to
Mhm.
Raiders.com and look at it, but sometimes those online depth charts fucking suck. So I try to kind of make my own essentially. But
Mhm. By the
I would
way,
say that's probably the reason why I'm good at that. Go ahead.
before we get out of here, I would like to be the first person to tell you in a couple seconds here now. Uh, any second here. Um, it's coming right up. For those of you watching at home that don't know, it is Michael's birthday now. It is 12 a.m. It's February 27th, 2024. It's episode 37, and Michael is turning 37. No, I'm just kidding. Mike would be Mike would be very depressed if he was turning
Yeah.
37. But Michael, happy birthday. It's a pleasure to do this show with you. You are one of my closest friends, and I really appreciate that, you take time out every week, to just chop it up on a podcast.
Well,
And
thank you.
I have a visual aid for your birthday. So I just want you to imagine. There you go. Happy birthday, Mike.
And we're gonna end it right there.
Yeah, we're gonna end it right there. No, I'm not gonna play that video. It's too graphic, I think, for the podcast, and we might get copyrighted anyway. But yeah, man. Um, happy birthday. It was a great pod. Everybody in the comments, I want you to if you don't see this live, just comment under the video after. Comment happy birthday to Michael, or even follow him on Twitter. His Twitter's right there at mforrester9. Wish him a happy birthday.
Sheesh.
Sheesh. So yeah, without further ado, that's the show. Mike, any last words now that you're 1 year older?
Um. Oh, well, if you multiply my age by 2, you get 54, which is just insane. I have lived
Hey,
half of 54 years.
54 is my lucky number, dude.
Yeah. I
Hey,
I was born on the 27th and now I am 27. and I don't know, 27's always been an interesting name or number to me. And then if you add 2 and 7, you get 9, which is like kind of my baseball number. I don't know. Hopefully, it's a good year.
Yeah, hopefully that means that there's, great like a great year for you to come. I think you can officially say that at the beginning you were a year younger at the beginning of this podcast than you are now. You aged a full year going through that roster. So
Yeah. I'm thinking Raiders win the Super Bowl. That's going to make it a good year.
you hear that, everybody? He says the Raiders will win the Super Bowl, and he didn't even uphold his end of the deal. Okay.
Oh, it was kind of you guys that were supposed to hold up the deal.
No. It was in your guys' house. Okay.
We were supposed to sabotage the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work, dude. I don't know what to tell you. But now, if the Raiders do win, I just want you to know we wore them down first, okay? Finish the mission, Mike.
Yeah, definitely. For anybody that doesn't know about this deal we're talking about, obviously the Niners play the Super Bowl in the Raiders' house. Like our first podcast, we agreed that, hey, if the Niners go to the Super Bowl this year in the Raiders' house, let's agree right now that they are allowed to win. I, the Raider fan, will be happy for the Niners to win the Super Bowl in our house, so long as in 3 years from now, the Raiders come to Santa Clara and win that Super Bowl in the Niners' house.
No, it was the Niners for sure win in the Raiders' house, and the Raiders will for sure win in the Niners' house. Not that you'd be happy.
Well, a little bit of both. I guess the point was I'm happy to take that deal. That's where the happiness came from.
It's essentially that I would have your blessing. Not that you would be happy, but yeah.
Right, yeah. But then it would have been against the Chiefs, which would have made me happier. So
yeah. But as for your birthday, if the Raiders win the Super Bowl, we're going to clip this right now. It's February 27th, 2024. Mike's birthday. His birthday wish is that the Raiders win the Super Bowl. And if they do it, then congratulations, Mike. They did it for you.